Okay. So today I'm going to combine a few things from the great Tsongkhapa's text, the chapter on meditation, as well as the chapter on the precious human life, which precious human life, I think people have been looking at in some of the morning meditations. And it's very worthwhile also to look at what Rinpoche, what Tsongkhapa says about meditation, since that is the main vehicle for going deeper and deeper into all of the topics and eliciting realizations which actually transform our life. I guess that's the logic. Start with posture and motivation. So upright, still, level shoulders, head tucked in a little bit, downwards, arms relaxed by the side of the body, hands in the lap. Make sure you have a good basis to the posture. Meaning the legs, feet should be appropriately placed. Let the muscles of the face be relaxed around the mouth, the jaw, around the eyes. Remember the stability, the nobility, the self-confidence of this posture. Which is necessary in the Mahayana, where, however absurd and outrageous it sounds in the beginning, we take responsibility to work for the welfare of all sentient beings. We go beyond the narrow attitude of just caring for me and mine, and we open up a little bit and embrace a wider world. So our open-hearted, upright posture represents that. We're willing to relate to this world, relate to the suffering beings. We may not be at all qualified to do that right now, but we aspire to do so. And even that aspiration may seem very, very fake right now, but we have to start somewhere. So it's good just to remind ourselves of this kind of attitude, even if we cannot feel it. It's not easy to feel that sense of open-heartedness towards everybody. Let's be honest. But because we have the Buddha nature, it is definitely possible. So think how wonderful it would be if, myself, the people I know, so many people I see who are obviously in a state of unease, distress, often tremendous suffering and pain. How wonderful if they could be free of that pain and its causes. Because it does have causes. It's not random. So not only do we have this kind of thought, but we can also take it further, as you know, and think, I'm not going to leave it just like that, thinking how wonderful it would be, but, I myself am going to do something about it. I myself will do something. So that, again, might feel right now very unusual and unrealistic. You might feel almost like a hypocrite thinking like this when it's impossible to feel it deeply yet in the heart. But no matter. It's a virtuous thought. It's something useful. It is planting seeds in our mind. Just to begin to think in this way. So I myself will take responsibility to enable all these beings to be free from suffering and its cause. And in our tradition, especially those people who have taken refuge, at this point, one might visualize, one might have visualized Lord Buddha and much light coming from Lord Buddha, who is seen as oneness with our teacher, our guru, and that light streaming into us, light and nectar, purifying any negativity and obstacles to developing this noble, open-hearted attitude. And also, there's a tradition to visualize beings sitting around us, such as our mother and father, our friends and relations, and other people. Recognizing all of them as connected and wishing for happiness, wishing to be free of pain. Some text goes far as to say that, one should visualize the beings in a state of suffering. Some of them are crying because of the difficulties they're going through. And we can also use our imagination, of course, to begin to understand the extent of human and animal pain. What's the problem? Any? Well, right. You can come here, Neil. There's plenty of space. Well. So, visualizing and thinking on these lines is very beneficial at the beginning. Because often we have, somewhat hard-hearted attitude, very self-protective attitude. For many reasons, mainly due to this holding on to very uptight, very tight sense of a me, an I. So here we are beginning to soften that, open up a little bit. And as it is said, we allow sadness to enter the heart. There is sadness, obviously, when we see the state of people, the state of how people have to suffer. We see the state of the world in general. We reflect on how bereft of proper understanding and teachings, beings just keep on revolving on and on and on in this vicious kind of circle that we call samsara, which we liken to a blind man under the hot sun in a desert without water, going round and round in circles in a kind of delirious state, not knowing how to find an oasis with life-giving water and shade. This being going around in circles is without a guide, without a helper, without a true helper. Sometimes you may see a blind person in the street with their white stick, tapping and slowly going forwards. And that itself often elicits at least a twinge of empathy and concern for that person. And we might even be motivated to ask if they need help or, directions. But I suppose what we're all going through, according to the teachings, circling in samsara, is far, far, far more dangerous and horrific. Even though we may have excellent eyesight and all the organs functioning, but because of the lack of functioning wisdom, we just keep on revolving, taking rebirth in an uncontrolled way and experiencing the results of the various karma we have created. So really think I'm going to, in my life, try and be of some benefit to these beings. I must do something. starting with this session. And we can spend a little time being with the breath, since to be of any benefit to ourselves and others, we need a somewhat calm and centered mind. So let's be aware of the breath for a few minutes, not getting caught up in the wandering thoughts, but coming back to the sensation of breath at the nostrils. Letting there be a sense of relief and letting go with the out-breath. Okay, so thank you, everybody. Onliners and people here at Tushita. So as I said at the beginning, today we'll combine some of the teachings in this text, this great text on meditation, with putting it into practice with one of the topics, part of one of the topics called the precious human rebirth, precious human life. So sometimes, when we approach spirituality, meditation, of course, as we mentioned a few weeks ago in the teachings at that time, we're in a bit of a hurry. We would like some kind of a quick fix, in the nature of, when we want to feel comfortable and harmonious in body and mind, we often can take a massage or have a nice shower, which makes us feel invigorated and happier very quickly. But here we're talking about something with much more depth and profundity. And meditation isn't something, according to this tradition, we just jump into without proper preparation. It is connected with so many other factors in our life. And this is very much comes out in what Tsongkhapa is saying in his chapter on meditation, and then the chapter following it on refuting misconceptions, misunderstandings regarding meditation. So you've been looking at some of this material with your teacher Nico in the morning meditations, those of you who are attending those. And I think Nicoji has been going through some of this material, like the 7 limb prayer for accumulating merit and purifying negativities. But I'll just go briefly through the meditation session chapter, and then we'll begin to look at the deeper chapter on, the next chapter on refuting misconceptions, and then we will put that together with some practice on what these translators translate as a human life of leisure and opportunity, sometimes briefly called the precious human life, precious human rebirth. Okay, so Tsongkhapa speaks of what to do during the session. It starts with a preparation, then you have an actual session of meditation, and then you have a conclusion, like we do in very brief form here at Tushita. Even we have some sitting quietly, we have a motivation, and then we have the main bulk of the session. And sometimes I do forget to dedicate, which is very, very wrong. One must always have some dedication as the conclusion of the session. So if we were doing the preparation properly, and it's worth hearing about this because it can plant some seeds in our minds, and it can be something that we can find very useful. Different people find different things useful, and you will find some of these things you know about already, you like doing, and they're also very culturally fitting. The first thing is to clean the place where we're staying. So if you have a room, you clean it. You don't start meditating in a very dirty room because you're waiting for your maid or whatever to come and clean the house at 10 o'clock or in the afternoon. You can clean up a corner of your room yourself. And as we're doing it, of course, we can apply other practices, right? Like the bodhicitta practice, or I'm cleaning away all the delusions of sentient beings, or I'm I'm sweeping away the suffering of beings, whatever. Basically, we can think I'm cleaning away the suffering or the pollution in my mind, like that. So we do that, then we can obtain offerings properly, meaning not stealing them, and arranging them on the altar. If we have an altar, we should, of course, if we're Buddhist, we would have some kind of basic altar, which requires symbols of the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. So for the Buddha's body, we have a statue. For the speech, we would have a text on the altar. And for the mind, we would have a stupa or a picture of a stupa. yeah, representing the mind of the Buddha, traditionally, but we do what we can. We could just have a picture of our teacher or of the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, or something like that. Anyway, we make fresh offerings. If we don't have physical offerings like that, we can offer water bowls, like we do often at Tushita, 7 bowls representing 7 kinds of offering. And this is like to prepare the mind. You know, it's like, you can say, oh, it's like a ritual, but it's actually very meaningful. And there's very vast ways of doing the water offering and ways of thinking about the water, what kind of water it is, attributing all kinds of positive qualities to it, and of course offering it very mindfully and slowly to the Buddha, to your gurus, and so forth, imagining that great happiness and bliss, great bliss is arising in the mind of the gurus, of your guru Buddha, the Buddha who is oneness with our guru. That can be done. Then we sit up straight on a comfortable seat, suitable posture, and so forth. He gives these basic instructions. Then, again, if we want to do it traditionally, we wouldn't just then again go straight into meditating on a topic. We would imagine that we are surrounded by sentient beings, or at least we can imagine the Buddha in space before us. There's vast ways of doing this, simple ways of doing this. I think Geshe Dorje Damlula, Tibet House, he at least asked people to visualize Lord Buddha and His Holiness the Dalai Lama like that. And I think maybe one's personal guru, something. Anyway, so Geshe-la, introduces it in a simple way. So we can imagine. And this is for inspiration and to remind us that, the Buddhas are there. The Buddha's mind pervades space. So this is one way of reminding ourselves that the Buddha is there. Buddha's there in front of us, watching over us. So we can accumulate a lot of positive energy by doing that, and then offering and so forth that we do later with that visualized merit field, as it's called. Tsongkhapa makes the point now that there are cooperative conditions for everything in life, for suffering as well as for happiness. And if we want to, as he puts it, produce the path, or as the translators put it, I don't know what the Tibetan says, if we want to create the cooperative conditions for the production of the path in our mind, then we need favorable conditions such as accumulation of positive qualities, accumulation of merit, favorable conditions, and the purification of our mind of obscuring karmas and so forth, which are the unfavorable conditions. We need to do that. If we don't have these cooperative conditions, Tsongkhapa says, then we will not. It will be, he says, it is extremely difficult then to produce the path in our mind, meaning produce the understanding, the realizations, which is why I suppose many of us go for years and years practicing, and we're wondering why our mind isn't really changing very much. So the traditional teachers like Tsongkhapa would say, well, the reason it's not changing is because we haven't created the conducive conditions, the cooperative conditions. And remember that even someone as great as Tsongkhapa, who had extraordinary mind, when he requested his own teacher, he had this amazing connection with the Buddha Manjushri, he requested Manjushri for help in understanding the deepest aspects of ultimate truth and so forth. Then Manjushri told him clearly, you have to, accumulate merit, you have to purify obscurations, and you have to make many prayers to your guru. You have to pray intently. So if even Tsongkhapa was told to do that, then you can imagine how much we need to do that. So he says, you must purify your mind with what are called the 7 branches of worship. Well, we call it very often the 7-limb prayer. 7 branches of worship. These comprise the essential aspects of collecting positive energy and purifying the mind. Okay, so then briefly to go through this, we first make prostration, obeisance with the body, speech, and mind, and some people would actually then make full length, some prostrations before the session. One may do it in a somewhat Vajrayana fashion by imagining that we have not one, but countless bodies, and we are prostrating to countless Buddhas throughout space, because there are Buddhas throughout space, unimaginable numbers of them. And we can imagine with unimaginable numbers of us prostrating to all of these Buddhas. This could be useful for some people. It could be just a distraction for some of us, so then we don't need to do that. But be aware that this is considered a very amazing practice if one can begin to do that. Yeah. So as one master says, even if you're able to bow down to one Buddha statue, one visualized Buddha, even that is amazing. Even that is wonderful. The merit is immeasurable. So these things take some time for some of us to begin to get a feel for what's being spoken about. I know a lot of modern Buddhists who don't like the word merit. For them it seems like you're totting up points in your book, your brownie points or whatever. But for the traditionalists in both Theravada and Mahayana, this is a reality. Our practice depends on positive energy, on merit, and the obscurations, the demerit, the pap, the negativity, does have to be removed. Otherwise, nothing happens. So, in brief, we have this. We have the limb of prostration, and at the same time as we prostrate, many different mantras or verses we could be reciting. Yeah. Okay. Verses one could take from Shantideva or from the Guru Puja. There are many different verses, or just a mantra, or yeah. Second branch of worship, offerings. Those of you who have come to our previous Tara and Medicine Buddha Pujas, you know how we do that. We imagine all the different 8 kinds of offerings pervading space, 2 kinds of water, water for washing, water for drinking, then flowers, then incense, then lights, beautiful lights, and then perfumes. And these are described quite a bit in some of the texts, how to think about these different offerings. And then after perfume, we have food and fruits, and then music. And so, it's kind of a almost riotous display of amazing display filling space of all these offerings. And again, for some of us, it would be too much. We could just imagine just offering some very beautiful flowers or some music, to start with, just 1 or 2 things. Or, offering some incense, something like that. But we can have some things on the altar, but what we can do with our mind, of course, is could be very extraordinary. Especially people who have developed a very good visualization capacity. Amazing what could be visualized, being offered, being accepted, and bringing again great bliss to the to the minds of the Buddhas. And it's very important to realize we're not bribing the Buddhas here, or Buddhas don't need our offerings, but it makes them very happy when we offer. because for our sake, it's very good for us to create that kind of positive energy, that merit of offering to the Buddhas. So we have the limb of offering. Yeah, and again, there are many verses we can engage in. Then we have the limb of confession. Confession. What creates unimaginable suffering, life to life, is the fruition of negative karma. That's what brings the suffering, based, of course, on the delusions. That's what brings suffering. Even, right now, any kind of suffering you and I may be feeling right now is a result of karma, So when we confess, we are accepting, we are acknowledging, are we not, that we have engaged in a lot of activity with our body, our speech, and our mind, which are very detrimental to us. They're harmful to us. Of course, they have also harmed others, but primarily we could say that it's harmed us, and it has created obscurations in our mind, which means basically it veils our mind, making it harder and harder for us to see the truth of karma, see the truth of the path of emptiness and so forth, or even to accept refuge, rebirth, and all those things. Not accepting these things in a very rigid way is also a result of karmic obscuration. So we need to confess all of this, very sincerely. And of course, it's just one line, and it would be, gone over in a minute or less in most people's way of doing this practice. But again, it's a reminder that we need to purify. So, the simple line would be, I purify all my negativities accumulated since beginningless time. And with that, we also accept that as much as possible, we're going to refrain from engaging in those actions in future as much as we can. We'll refrain from them. So with a mind of healthy regret, one engages in confession. Then the next one is, of course, the more we've reflected on suffering and karma, then the more this limb makes sense. Otherwise, it seems, again, a bit artificial, Why do I need to confess? This is old-fashioned, or, no, they do this in other religions. Why is Buddhism involved with this? So we need to understand, which is why we need to study, of course. That makes everything a bit more meaningful. Then the next limb, the fourth, is rejoicing, which I know Lama Tsongkhapa always emphasized. He said, you must stop in a puja or something and spend more time on this rejoicing limb, because it is so easy with this limb to create an abundant positive energy and merit in the mind. So by remembering one's own goodness, one's own good qualities and actions, the good qualities and actions of your friends, your Dharma friends, without any trace of competitiveness, you see, or envy. So then we even think of people who practice a lot more than we do, and so forth, and we rejoice. We rejoice because we realize it's the cause of virtue. What those people are doing, what I've been doing, which is positive, is virtue. It's the cause of happiness. So of course I must be happy about it. I must rejoice. It's wonderful. How wonderful that myself and others are creating these powerful causes for happiness, future happiness. So we rejoice, and then we rejoice. Rinpoche would say, rejoice in those engaged in the Theravada path, morality, concentration, wisdom, attaining nirvana, how wonderful it is. And that's the phrase Rinpoche would often use, how wonderful it is, how wonderful it is. But we can inspire the mind with whatever words in whatever language is useful for us, obviously. And then we think of the bodhisattvas and our gurus and the extraordinary work they do and rejoice in that. How wonderful it is, how wonderful it is. So rejoicing is something highly praised by the great being, because we can just sit there rejoicing and creating vast amount of positive energy without having to get up and prostrate or even make offerings or anything. We just, because to the power of the mind. And if you rejoice in the goodness of someone who is equal to you spiritually, you attain, half or the same as that person, something like that. If that person is of greater merit than you, then of course you don't have as much merit as them, but you again accumulate a great deal of merit if you're rejoicing in a bodhisattva's activities, for example. Tremendous amount of merit, to do that. So this limb is something worth also investigating and practicing, limb of rejoicing. Then another very important, the fifth one is to request, to implore the gurus, teachers, to turn the wheel of the Dharma, meaning to teach. This creates the cause to meet teachers, receive teachings, not be reborn at times when there are no teachings available in the universe or in our part of the universe, wherever we're reborn. So this creates the cause for the Dharma also to last longer, to implore as Tsongkhapa says here, I think quoting one of the texts, I implore all the protectors, lights of the world in the 10 directions, who have reached Buddhahood, which is without attachment, to turn the peerless wheel of the teachings. There's a strong image of the wheel in the Indian tradition, the wheel of the teachings. We have the Eightfold Path, we have this wheel to revolve those teachings. It's connected also with the Chakravartin kings who possess these great wheels. So anyway, and then while we're doing this, we are asked to also imagine we are offering the Dharma chakras and beautiful wheels to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Then we need to supplicate the Buddhas, the teachers, to remain, not to attain, not to go in for nirvana, not to get caught up in nirvana, where they would be out of touch with us, but to continue to stay with us. Please stay for eons equal in number to the particles of the universe, in order to bring happiness and benefit to all beings. So those who are totally qualified, who could, if they wish, just go, flip into nirvana, they have the ability, but due to their compassion, they come back again and again and again, endlessly, to help us. So we ask them to do that. We ask them, please stay. So we first, we've asked them to teach and stay with us. Don't go into nirvana. So, help us, be with us life to life, guide us. So like that. And here again, we can imagine immeasurable images of our body being duplicated and making these supplications. Yeah, while we're doing that, it said we can imagine we're offering a beautiful throne, lion throne, to emphasize, stability of the teachings. Yeah. And then the last one is dedication. We dedicate all of the merit we've generated by engaging in the previous 6 practices. Whatever merit I've accumulated, however slight, and it might be quite slight, if you're, especially if you're going through your daily practice, a little bit of a hurry. So, it's all, you can recite the 7-limb prayer in, 1 minute. So it all happens quite fast, but there is some slight merit. So even if it's a slight merit, we haven't spent much time on each. It's good. So he says, whatever merit I've accumulated, however slight, from obeisance, offering, confession, rejoicing, imploring and supplication, I dedicate all of it to enlightenment. So we don't just let it fizzle out. We're dedicating it to something very amazing, very noble. So Tsongkhapa himself says that dedication refers to never exhausting any of these roots of virtue, because you have dedicated them with strong aspiration as causes of complete enlightenment for yourself and all living beings. So it means this dedication remains very powerful, forever until we are enlightened. That energy remains. It doesn't just fizzle out. So to understand these words, Tsongkhapa says, recite them slowly, without distraction. Once you do this, you will have an immeasurable mass of merit. So he says, 5 of these are for merit, and 1, the confession, is to clear away obscurations. Cultivating delight, or rejoicing, will increase the virtue. It increases the merit by rejoicing. I haven't heard this before. This is interesting. You may have few virtues as a result of accumulation, purification, and increase, but you will expand them enormously through dedication. Although virtuous effects may arise only temporarily and then dissolve quickly, through dedication, they will never dissipate. Through proper dedication, obviously. Then you can visualize the mandala and so forth. These are other practices you can do. I won't go into that now. And then we have the actual session. Then what to do at the conclusion. And then an important section on what to do in between meditation sessions, which is most of the time for us, right? It could be a 23.5-hour period, between half an hour of morning meditation and the meditation the next morning could be almost a day. So most of our time is in between. So Tsongkhapa very kindly tells us how to think and behave at that time. Okay, first of all, the actual session, in brief, we'll go into it a bit more soon. But at this point in the text, Tsongkhapa says, meditation, what is it? We mentioned it, I think, yesterday. The act of sustaining an object of meditation by repeatedly focusing your mind upon a virtuous object of meditation. So you have a virtuous object, you keep it in mind, you keep on reflecting on it, meditating on it, focusing your mind on it. And the purpose of this is as follows. Anybody remember the purpose of meditation? What Tsongkhapa had said? I repeated it a couple of times, but yeah, if we don't take notes, of course, it's harder. So the purpose of meditation, he puts it so clearly, so amazingly. From beginningless time, you have been under the control of your mind. Your mind has not been under your control. So much I know. You have been under the control of your mind. Your mind has not been under your control. Furthermore, your mind tended to be veiled, obscured by the klesh, the delusions, afflictions, disturbing emotions. All these different words are used. Rinpoche used to call them disturbing, unsubdued minds, which is quite nice. Disturbing, unsubdued minds. They're unsubdued, they're out of control, and they disturb the mind. This is what a klesh is. Attachment, anger, jealousy, all these things are unsubdued minds, disturbing, unsubdued minds. So thus, meditation aims to bring this mind, which gives rise to all kinds of faults, under control, and aims to make it serviceable. Anybody remember what serviceable meant? When your car is serviceable, what does it mean? If you say, I have a very serviceable car, what does it mean? Ji? yeah, it can be fixed and then it can do its job, taking you from A to B. So we say here with the mind, serviceability means you can direct your mind as you wish towards a virtuous object of meditation. As you wish here means when we have perfected this, we can keep our mind on the object for as long as we want, basically. At least they say for 2 or 4 hours, something like that. I can't remember. I think 2 hours or 4 hours is said to be what you're aiming at in the practice of calm abiding practice, the Shine practice. You should be able to keep your mind on the object of meditation for 4 hours without it getting distracted at all. कहीं नहीं हिलेगा, कुछ नहीं होगा, उसी पे रहेगा, आपके virtuous object पे. So this is something amazing. That's what serviceability means. Right now, our mind, well, my mind is not serviceable. It goes here, there, up, down, sideways, everywhere. Past, future, hopes, fears, etc., etc. It is bouncing all over the place, the mind. So it's not serviceable. You may have a good motivation, but you can't sustain the object of meditation. You cannot repeatedly keep your mind focused on that object of meditation, which is what Tsongkhapa says meditation should be. Is this clear? Is it too technical? It's not so technical, no? It's kind of clear. He also says you might try to sustain your meditation by jumping to this and that object of meditation. It's like, don't do that. Don't set up a whole variety of virtuous objects for one session of meditation. That'll be too much. Then you won't be able to take up your object of meditation properly with this method. You will then greatly hinder your mind's ability to be directed as you wish towards a virtuous object of meditation. And if you've made this a habit from the start, the virtuous practice of your whole lifetime will be flawed, will be tainted, yeah? So what he says then, at the beginning of a session, firmly determine, I'm going to meditate on such and such, yeah? What you are going to meditate on. And just stick to that, yeah? I'll not set up something that is different from what I've determined, he says. And then sustain your meditation with mindfulness and vigilance. I'm trying to remember right now what the difference is between mindfulness and vigilance. Maybe vigilance here means introspection, that mindfulness is to, keep the mind on the object, but introspection, vigilance is to be aware when excitement or a kind of a dullness is arising in the mind, and then to take the appropriate steps. So we need both of those. The ability to remember, which is what mindfulness means, smriti, remembrance, remember the object of meditation, but also part of the mind, like a spy, is watching for sleepiness and for mental excitement. Excitement and sinking, it's called in the text. So these things are necessary. And he gives an example here, so I'll read it because it's useful, okay? Before we go, we will have some time. We will have some time. This is so important. It is so good. But I'm sorry if it's confusing people because the poor helpers, Nivita has to post something and I don't abide by what is posted. So then I hope people don't criticize the helpers for giving wrong information. We might not get to the meditation, but this is also important. And is this interesting? Bored to nahi ho rahe zyada? Mayank, are you okay? Not sleepy? No? You don't want to come in the limelight? I can. Yeah? Come in the limelight. You're one of our heroes. Come on. I think, yeah, anyway, I won't mention, but I think Mayank might have a lot of time soon for meditation. Yeah, some changes in lifestyle. Bring a cushion. Always good to see you close up. Okay, so how to sustain the meditation specifically? Okay, here he takes a little example, Tsongkhapa, so that I guess he feels we need an example here because he's talking what could be construed theoretically, but all of this is meant to be practiced. So he takes example of, this major first topic, relying on the teacher, relying on the guru. So are you okay there? हाँ, ये कौन सा स्टाइल है आपका बैठने का? नहीं, ये आपका, it's a very, I've never seen that style. This is the Vasant Kunj style. यार इतने साल हो गए, वो भी टीचर के डेज पे. I'm just making fun of Mayank's meditation posture. Sorry. Shouldn't do that. Okay, first reflect on the benefits of relying on the teacher, such as quickly attaining Buddhahood. Okay, so now he's explaining how to meditate. But of course, I think, presuming you have done a little bit of study on that topic, so that these things are not totally new. So you have looked at the teachings on how to rely on the guru a little bit. Then he says, first reflect on the benefits of relying on the teacher, such as quickly attaining Buddhahood, and the drawbacks of not relying on the teacher, such as giving rise to suffering in this and future lives. Then think many times, and with an attitude of restraint, I will never allow myself to conceive of faults in my guru. Okay, so this is one thing that's mentioned in the teachings. When you have an authentic Mahayana guru whom you are now are relying on, you don't focus on their faults. But it's easy to actually fall into that trap, because your guru doesn't appear in a body of light or with some exquisite form like a Buddha statue, and you keep on seeing faults in the way they behave or walk or talk or things like that, or maybe they slurp a bit while they eat. If they're Tibetans, they might drink tea with an enormous slurp, which you find incredibly disgusting as a civilized Westerner or whatever. So don't do that, he's saying, many times with an attitude of restraint. I will never allow myself to conceive of faults in my guru. After considering any of your guru's good qualities that you know, such as ethical discipline, concentration, wisdom, being learned, meditate on them, meaning repeatedly bring them to mind, those qualities, bring that virtuous object to mind again and again, until you produce a faith that has the aspect of mental clarity. I think he's saying that you should not just have kind of some wishy-washy faith. It should appear very clearly to your mind, some kind of really clear mental image or perception or feeling of faith in this guru, in your guru, having reflected on the qualities. You see? I think we can begin to see how we don't get the results that we can get from meditation unless we are going through, as Tsongkhapa said, repeatedly bringing something to mind, however initially boring it may feel. You have to keep on contemplating, for example, how the guru is kind, what their virtues are, through remembering and reflecting on it. Then, in accordance with the sutras, which have been cited earlier, you contemplate how your guru's kindness has been and will be helpful to you. You see, before this, there was a chapter on relying on the teacher. So based on that, he's saying, remember your guru's kindness again and again, how it has been helpful for you already, how it will be helpful for you in the future. Even if your guru's passed away, the kindness hasn't gone away. The kindness of the kind of teachings they've given, the example they've given, the inspiration they've given, that doesn't die, unless one allows it to. So one has to keep that alive and see how the Guru's kindness is helpful to us in the future. Meditate on that until you develop respect from the depths of your heart. So you can see from this, this is kind of traditional in the sense that he's saying you have to keep going at it until you elicit some kind of understanding, feeling, in this case, faith and real understanding of the kindness of the teacher. So he's not saying, though, that you can do it in one session. He's not saying that. But he's saying we have to do this kind of thing again and again. And traditionally, for those who are very fortunate in the past, if they had, a good guru and they had all the causes, they would have a teacher who would keep on guiding them. They would do the practice, go to the teacher, discuss, and then the teacher would advise what to do next or to stay with the topic, whatever. So that would have been amazing to have a qualified teacher constantly giving one advice on one's practice. However, we have to do what we can. And this is what Tsongkhapa has just said is very useful to the extent that it's telling us that we have to repeatedly think about certain things. We can't just do it once in a session, Meditate on them until you produce a mind of faith, Men think many times with an attitude of restraint. I'll never allow myself to conceive of faults in my guru. I mean, the great Pabongka Rinpoche, great in the Gelugpa tradition, sometimes not very, anyway, I won't get into Tibetan politics. It's ridiculous to do that. Anyway, be aware, all you beginners who think that all Tibetans are, saints and there's no politics in Tibet or Tibetan Buddhism. There is, but it doesn't matter. Just focus on what is the greatness and goodness. But yeah, there are divisions, and your guru may not be somebody else's guru. You have to always remember that. Or your guru's guru may be somebody who is even looked down upon by some other lineage's guru for whatever reason. It's possible. Anyway, so the great Pabongka, speaking about the death meditation, said that you should really, in the beginning, you should keep on reflecting on death until you can't sleep at night. It should really hit you. But, I'm going to die, and I don't know when I'm going to die. Especially those two, I guess. And what's going to help me when I die is the Dharma. So to reflect on these things again and again until you feel a kind of, you really feel sick to the stomach and you can't sleep because one has fear also. Initially, But, one might say these are very hardcore people and, we're 21st century people. We're not going to engage in stuff like that. But anyway, just to let you know what some of the authentic masters of the lineage have said, that topic requires you to meditate until you feel afraid of death and want to do something about it. And this topic on relying on the guru is to be done until one has faith and respect for the guru, very deep faith and respect. Which may not be apparent now why it's so important, but apparently when one begins to engage in Vajrayana or tantric practices, then you really need a highly qualified guru. One really needs someone who has been there and can guide you in what is often very intricate and potentially dangerous practice. So anyway, at all levels of the path, the guru is necessary. What to do at the conclusion? Then dedication prayers. Do it with an aspiration so strong that it will become the cause of fulfilling your temporary and final aims. Dedicate the virtue you've accumulated. And if you were, again, a practitioner who had time or a lot of dedication, then one would meditate like this in 4 sessions. This is what traditionally one would do during a retreat also, before dawn, then in the morning, then in the afternoon, and also then at night. That's how one would practice. With all of these things, at least going through some of the preliminaries, doesn't mean you have to sweep your room every time you engage in a meditation session, but at least some of them or most of these practices could be done. At a minimum, I was looking through Rinpoche's advice on the Vajrasattva practice. Then he would say at the beginning, at least you have to recollect impermanence and death at the beginning of a session, together with bodhicitta. Yeah, bodhicitta has to be there. You know, it's a Mahayana practice. One is doing it for the benefit of all sentient beings, but it's the impermanence and death that keeps on reminding us that we don't have much time necessarily, and better get on with it. You know, who knows? We might die during the session. Yeah, it's yeah. Then he says, don't meditate for too long in the beginning. You will become sleepy, or there'll be too much excitement in the mind because your mind is drifting. And then it'll be difficult to correct this habit if you keep on doing it. Therefore, meditate in many short sessions in the beginning. Many short sessions. You should end your session while you still want to meditate some more. That will be very good. Otherwise, if you meditate too much, then he says you will feel sick when you see your meditation cushion. So we shouldn't feel like that. We should enjoy looking at our meditation cushion. If your meditation becomes stable, he says, then you can lengthen your session. Don't be too strict or don't be too excessively relaxed, and sustain your meditation in this way. If you do this, you will have very few obstacles, and you will also overcome problems such as overtiredness, laziness, and those problems, lethargy. Then what do we do in between sessions? The 23 hours or so where we're not meditating formally, what do we do? The point here they're making is if we don't do anything at that time and just behave in an out of control fashion, then half our practice or whatever it is will not be that useful. It won't be very powerful. So he says, you have to rely on mindfulness and vigilance at all times, you know. You have to train the mind in the object of meditation, keep on bringing it to mind. Say you are meditating at the moment on precious human rebirth, then during the day also one should bring it to mind again and again as much as we can. We should observe any vows, of course, we may have taken, and also accumulate merit. We can do that in so many ways during the day, by rejoicing, by just having a very good, happy, very loving mind towards the people we meet, even people who are misbehaving, developing compassion for them. Then we keep on, you see, using our day, our in-between time, or sometimes called post-meditation period. It's all becoming meaningful. Furthermore, learn the 4 preconditions, which are causes for readily creating serenity and insight, or calmness and wisdom. They are restraining the senses, restraining the senses, acting vigilantly, an appropriate diet, and striving to practice without sleeping at the wrong time. And then when we do go to sleep, acting properly at the time of going to sleep. So you see that there's a lot of practices to be done. I'm not going to go through everything because it's just too much, but it makes sense how we have to guard the sensory faculties and the imagination, because our mind, our eyes especially, can latch onto things and get attached. Our imagination can take us all over the place, and we can get angry, attached, jealous, everything, just by imagining things. So we should really practice restraint. You don't let the sensory faculties engage with sensory objects. Often we just have to avoid them, especially if we're beginners. We just should avoid certain places, certain objects, and so forth. course, monks and nuns are enjoined that they shouldn't be out in the evening just walking around for no reason. They should certainly not be going to lay people's houses in the evening without some excellent reason. They shouldn't be seen in restaurants in the evening. This is for monks and nuns. They have to be very appropriate where they go, what they do, etc., etc. The acting with vigilance means how you behave with your body when you're going out to towns, how your eyes are behaving. How do you use your eyes when you go out, Be careful with what your eyes are doing, What are your limbs, fingers, and toes doing? Are you meaninglessly stretching out and contracting your limbs, your fingers, your toes? Sometimes, you're not supposed to do that in a gompa, for example, where you might be pointing your feet towards the holy images. So, actions of religious robes and alms bowls is for monks and nuns, how to handle the religious robes and the alms bowl. Actions relating to eating, drinking, and so forth. Actions of the body in a temple area, all of this. Actions of speech, there should be proper actions of speech. Receiving the oral transmissions. Understanding them, reciting those which you've received, teaching them to others, conversing with others in order to encourage their joyous perseverance, all kind of things. Actions of mind. Wow, this is difficult. Under actions of mind, Tsongkhapa says, sleeping in the middle period of the night. That's what one is allowed, strictly speaking. Retiring to a quiet place and then not speaking while you think over the meaning of what you have heard in the teachings. Practice concentration by means of the 9 mental states of shamatha. Strive for insight. Wow, this is a difficult one. When you feel fatigued during hot weather, you must do something to dispel your desire to fall asleep at an improper time. Yeah. So not sleeping in the daytime, unless you're sick or old or something. And also not sleeping in the first and last part of the night. Yeah. So there's all these kind of things which we can be thinking about in between the formal meditation periods. Yeah, we have to, for example, I think the Sangha, strictly speaking, always supposed to, if you're going out, why am I going out? Where am I going? How am I going to go? I mustn't get distracted, mustn't just wander around, things like that, We can't just kind of cruise around. In short, be mindful of whatever behaviors may take place in the day and the night. Understand what is to be done and what is not to be done. Whenever engaging in those which are to be done or turning away from those which are not to be done, be vigilant and think, now I'm engaging in or turning away from this and now this. If you do this, it said you'll not be polluted by mistakes in this life, or even after death, you'll not fall into the miserable realms. Appropriate diet, a lot on diet. Not eating too little. If you eat too little, you'll be hungry, you'll become weak, have no strength for virtuous activities. You must eat just the amount that will allow you not to be afflicted by hunger until tomorrow's meal. Not eating too much. This is because if you eat too much, your body will be heavy as if you were carrying a burden. It'll be hard to breathe in and out. Sleepiness and lethargy will increase and you'll be unfit for any action. So you won't really have the strength for eliminating the afflictive emotions. 3, eating digestible and wholesome food. With such food, you eliminate old feelings of suffering related to food and you do not create new ones. Yeah. Sometimes we have a lot of suffering due to eating the wrong thing, not too much of it. So doing it in this way eliminates that. 4, eating appropriate food which does not produce afflictions. So there's said to be some foods, which if you eat too much of them, they create attachment or other things like too much garlic or eggs or chicken or things like that. Even things like mooli, radish, too much, those kind of things, it's said can produce more kind of unsubdued minds, unsubdued states of mind. So if you eat appropriate foods, you don't create misdeeds, you stay happy. Then he talks a lot about the faults of food. The faults of food. The Kheer Dal gang WhatsApp group should take note of this, The faults of food. Means fault of trying to get the food. You have to make great effort to get food, assemble the causes, you suffer if you don't get it. Even if you do get food, you fear that it could be stolen or wasted, and you suffer because of taking great pains to look after it. This is, of course, more old-fashioned. We do have more means to guard our food and put it in the fridge and stuff, but still, it's a hassle. I find it a hassle not to be able to find what I want in the fridge because it's so full of stuff, It's too much food, leftover food. And a lot of sweets as well at the moment. People give so many sweets, all these sweets all over the place in the fridge. Anyway, the fault of ruining close relationships. Even close relatives, such as fathers and sons, may dispute and fight with one another for the sake of food. Yeah, I don't know of this happening, but maybe it was something happened more in the past. Have you ever fought with your family over food, Mike?
What should be made in front
of dinner? What should be made? What's for dinner? I get so annoyed when one of my relations asks me the day before, what do you want to eat tomorrow for lunch or tomorrow for dinner? And I couldn't care less, So there's all these faults. The faults of insatiability. Kings and the like will go to war with each other and experience much suffering when their craving for food intensifies. I guess, some people, when their populations are growing, then you need to go out and get more land. I guess a lot of human civilization started that way. You expand to try and, get more land and, so on and so forth. Lack of independence. Those who eat others' food experience much suffering when they have to fight with opponents on behalf of their leader. Yeah. But it also means other things. If you lack of independence, you have to eat with other people. I used to have to eat with certain relations who took twice as long to eat food as I took. And it's boring, If there's no fantastic conversation happening, you're just sitting there with an empty plate and this other person is mumbling and just eating very slowly. And you just feel like, you just want to get up and run, but it's kind of not polite. So there's all these kind of sufferings from having to eat. And then having the fault that arises from wrongdoing. Having amassed sins of body, speech, and mind for the sake of food and its causes, then you remember your sins when you're dying, and you die with regret. And after death, you fall into a miserable realm. Then he says something very nice. He says, despite all of this, there is some benefit to food. There is some benefit to food. After all, the body depends on it. Good, Tsongkhapa. At least he's in the same realm as us, Eat your food after you think, since it's not correct to rely on food just for the sake of my body's maintenance, I will conduct myself in a pure manner, in dependence on my body's maintenance. Remember, while eating, according to Shantideva, one of his texts, the Compendium of Training, Shiksha Samuchaya, while you're eating, reflect that you are benefiting the giver of the food. This is mainly for monks and nuns, I guess, but for us too. Whereas now you are assembling microorganisms in your body through the material gift of food. In the future, you will gather these beings together through the teachings. So the beings in your gut that you are feeding the food to right now, later you pray that in the future they become your disciples. So maybe all of you are in my gut in a previous life. Who knows? And vice versa. Yeah. You will also think that you will accomplish the welfare of all living beings. Nagarjuna, is in his famous friendly letter, Surlekha, says, with an understanding that food is like medicine. Eat it without hostility or attachment, not for haughtiness or might or robustness, only to maintain your body. This may not be a bodhicitta motivation, but it's very important to also, there's a basic way to think. Then how to practice diligently without sleeping at the wrong time, how to act properly at the time of sleep. So yeah, how should you sleep? During the day, the first 3 portions of the night, spend your time doing virtuous activities, then only sleep in the middle portion of the night. For by sleeping, you will enhance those elements of the body which are benefited by sleep. When you develop the body in that way, your body will be most serviceable for employment in both kinds of joyous perseverance. When you go to sleep, first come out from the meditation room. So when you go to sleep, you should be coming out of the meditation room, not out of the TV room or something else. You should be coming out of the meditation room. Wash your feet. Actually, Rinpoche mentioned this. He says, if you wash your feet and at the same time visualize light pervading your body, then he says that is an amazing way to be able to sleep less and have refreshing sleep. But I can't say that I've tried it more than a few times, and I don't think it worked for me very well. But it's mentioned here by Tsongkhapa. Then lying on your right side, place your left leg upon your right and sleep like a lion. As for sleeping like a lion, among all animals, it's the lion who uses superior capacity, confidence, and fortitude to subdue its opponents. Likewise, one who joyously perseveres at practice, instead of sleeping, will use some superior capacity to subdue opponents and will, at the time of rest, sleep like a lion. This is not like the sleep of hungry ghosts, deities, or those who are involved in desire, for they all have laziness, weak perseverance, and little capacity to subdue opponents. And another point of view, he says, sleeping on your right side like a lion means your body naturally doesn't become limp. Even when you have fallen asleep, you don't lose your mindfulness. Your sleep does not become so heavy. You don't have bad or sinful dreams. If you should sleep in some other way, all the faults that are the opposite of these 4 will arise. You can apprehend light while going to sleep, mindfulness of what you've heard of the teachings during the day, pursue that till you fall asleep. Then you will engage the teachings even while you're asleep. Vigilance, make sure no afflictive emotion arises, eliminate it. And also, when you go to sleep, you should already be thinking about getting up, rising from sleep. So don't let your mind be totally overwhelmed by sleep. Sleep very lightly, like a deer, with a mind imbued with joyous perseverance. This will prevent heavy sleep, and you'll be able to awaken without oversleeping. Second, think, I will always practice staying awake, as the Buddha taught, and with great effort develop an aspiration to this end. Anyway, so like this, our own teacher, Lama Tsongkhapa, he didn't engage in ordinary sleep. In fact, he would not lie down. He took a vow not to lie down. There are some practices like that, ascetic vows, some lamas take, or people, they don't lie down. So I've never seen Rinpoche lying down. You would stay, and of course, when you have the advantage of, high realizations and meditative power, one doesn't need to lie down. Even I heard, even Westerners and others in the 3-year retreats, they are taught how to sleep sitting up. They don't lie down. They're in meditation box in some tradition. You have the meditation belt around you. And of course, you slump a lot, but you don't lie down to sleep. You're taught to do that, to develop that sense of staying awake and being more vigilant and not going into very heavy sleep or oversleeping. So they sleep sitting up in some of the traditions. I'm sure of that. I've heard this. So even if modern Western people can do this, it's obviously something that makes some sense. Acting purposefully in the manner described will clearly stop you from wasting so much of your life. I've explained it as the noble Asanga determined it to be. Everything Tsongkhapa says that I've said here about how to act before, during, after, and between sessions applies to all of the meditations described from here on in this text and including the section on wisdom. This concludes an explanation of what to do between sessions. So anyway, it's just good to hear this, isn't it, sometime, for the imprint. Even though we may not be able to approximate to it right now, we need to hear this. Otherwise, again, as we've been saying, we might think spiritual practice is something very simple, should be something very simple and quick, and shouldn't involve much effort, and so on and so forth. But then, this tradition would say, samsara is horrific. We've been suffering since beginningless time. If we would even remember some of our past lives, we would pass out with horror, heavens knows what is to come. So we should put a lot of effort into a process that has been proven to be able to reverse the negative effects of samsara, to actually cut the root of samsara. But of course, the mind is weak, the distractions are strong, and one doesn't often remind oneself enough or think critically enough about these things. But, for the great practitioners, samsara is terrifying. They may have gone beyond the fear of it through their practice, but their understanding of it for our sake is that it is terrifying. I find it terrifying, to be honest, just to look at how some people have to live and think, how could I live like that? How could I bear to be reborn even as a human in that area or in that kind of situation? It's horrific. It really doesn't feel good to think like that, but that's possible. And of course, much worse is possible. I wouldn't want to be reborn as a human in most parts of it, in many, many parts of the world. Right now, anyway. And according to the Buddhist scriptures, things are going to get worse before they get better, So we should desperate remedies, powerful remedies for powerful problem, powerful sickness, powerful, Yeah. What do you think? Sorry, I've spoken too much again, and it's 8 o'clock. I'm really sorry. That's why Tsongkhapa says at the beginning, be clear what you want to do in a session and stick to it. But it's his fault. He has such a intensive, detailed text. And all of it's relevant. We can't say any of it is irrelevant. Just because some of it seems to have been expanded a lot, it's all relevant. How we behave when we go out the door, it's all relevant to if things are connected, which they are, and if it makes sense, that if I behave like a lunatic for 23 hours, how do I expect to meditate properly for an hour? It's not going to work, right? You can't just switch like that. Any comments? Sorry, there are some in the chat. Sorry, folks. No, I don't think I can ask Mayank to please share the changes in his lifestyle. He might be embarrassed. You can always ask him personally, Vishad. Yeah, I don't want to. This is Happy Teachers' Day. Thank you, sir. Vigilance is like monitoring and watching out for dangers. And mindful is awareness. Yeah, that kind of thing. Thank you, Faridun. Faridun, good to see you. Mr. Bhujwala from Oval Maidan, Mumbai. Yeah, good to have you. And good to see Mr. Vikram after so long. Vikramji, pranam. Good to see you. And Ajirji turned up today, I think, as a elder statesman, father figure. Make sure we're in line. And Nandita, I hope you're better and not missing Sujitji too much. In fact, he's there, just a few rectangles away. Yeah. Any inputs, folks? Yeah, is that a hand going up, Navinji?
Yes, the reluctant hand. So when we talk about appropriate diet and eating appropriate food which does not produce afflictions.
Yes.
There is which is controversy here.
Yes, there is.
Like
I'm sure.
Someone like Tai Rinpoche would be very strongly against prohibiting meat.
Yes. Yes.
And for many people, meat, the act of killing,
yes,
provides certain kinds of affliction for sure.
Yes.
So in Vajrayana traditions, there is some idea of Ganachakra and so on. But if you avoid that rationale, how else do we think about meat eating as not afflictive?
As not afflictive. Well, again, it depends on our realizations. This is for beginners. And for beginners, as we know, lots of little things can make a big difference. And nothing is meant to be 100% written in stone. And I think we get that from Buddhist teachings, yeah? The Buddha didn't teach exactly the same thing to everybody. So we have to see what is appropriate for us. I mean, even His Holiness the Dalai Lama is telling everyone not to eat meat, right? Has been telling a lot of people, Tibetan. He himself eats meat, but he's explained it. My doctors told me if I don't eat meat, I'll get sick. So that's a special case. Yeah, he has a Tibetan body. He's been eating meat since he was a child, presumably in Tibet, and due to other factors, he needs some meat. But of course, he's His Holiness, and when he eats it, he'll be eating it away. I believe that will also benefit the consciousness of the dead animal. So, I mean, everything has to be appropriate. If there's really very, very, very few sources of protein in your life, then you have to eat some eggs, perhaps, you know, if there aren't a lot of other things around. But then people like Lama Zopa Rinpoche would say to his students, and he himself wouldn't eat eggs. He says egg causes attachment because chickens have a lot of attachment, and you know, an egg is a product of attachment. Don't eat eggs. So what do? So then you presumably try and eat with some kind of mindfulness, good motivation, etc., and not eat, you know, dozens of them. So one has to be appropriate, no? And not be too fanatical about things. Don't you think? There's no hard and fast rule. One great Lama, a good example, one great Lama, Kirti Sensab Rinpoche, he was called out of retreat to come and help teach, and he taught a lot of us for many years. Great Lama. Kala Chakra Master also gave teachings, transmissions to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So we were so fortunate he came and stayed at Root Institute for quite a long time in the early 90s. Early 90s. And what would he demand to be given every evening? What would be his diet every night before sleep? Meat and yogurt. Meat and yogurt. He's a great tantric practitioner. The yogurt apparently would help stabilize and slow down the movement of the winds, so they became more workable. And meat does the same kind of thing. I mean, initially we weren't horrified, but we were a bit disappointed. But then we began to understand, and we knew he was a great teacher. I mean, he was an amazing person. But every evening, meat and yogurt. Okay, so by Tsongkhapa standards in this text, maybe that's inappropriate diet for us, for you and me, but not for Kirtisensa Rinpoche. That's what he needed to engage in his tantric meditations, which presumably he also did pretty much all night, without sleeping. Because, Rinpoche had told us that Kirtisensa Rinpoche was enlightened eons ago, he's an amazing enlightened being. Anyway, yeah, so I hope that answers. And they do say, don't they, one man's meat is another man's poison. So some foods that will really help you with your meditation, they may make me sick or not help me. So I guess we have to experiment. What does make sense is not to eat too much, not to eat too little. But then that again, different for different people. What is how much, what is too much, what is too little. I know some Dharma friends who, when they eat garlic, it makes them feel very uncomfortable. They don't eat garlic usually, and when they eat it, makes them feel very uncomfortable. They were vegetarian, yes, I think, yeah, these were vegetarians. Husband, wife, they were directors of Root Institute, and they introduced wonderful food at Root. But for themselves, garlic really interfered, he said. I never felt that way. He had some much more subtle reaction to garlic. Of course, Ayurvedically speaking, garlic has many good properties. It's extremely good, apparently, for heart patients because it keeps the arteries unblocked, right? Something like that. So we should do what we need, and which is why I guess partly Rinpoche would spend so long meditating, blessing, praying before eating, because there's always going to be some kind of fault associated with food in terms of what's in it, where it came from, how it was procured. Something may be there karmically that makes that food not 100% good. But through the mantras that Rinpoche would recite and the motivation, amazing motivation, often, for half an hour until the food, is definitely cold, that would help purify anything connected with the faults of the food. Yeah. So, and in Kriya Tantra, the lowest form of Tantra, action Tantra, diet and purity and bathing are very important. Not so much, not in highest Yoga Tantra. But in Kriya Tantra, all of these bathing, very pure food, very important. Highest Yoga Tantra is a totally different ballgame. Obviously, Kirtisensa Rinpoche mainly practiced highest Yoga Tantra, the highest form. Meat and yogurt. Maybe when he was in Germany, he'd be eating sausages, and I don't know. But it all had a purpose, you see. Everything that he ate he was eating it because of some, and who knows, due to his compassion, his great Buddha ability, when he eats meat, he is benefiting that animal. We can't understand how that might work, but I believe it. Someone like that could be blessing the consciousness of the dead animal. So who am I to judge, But we were a bit taken aback when the regular demand in the evenings. There's also Indian tradition, you don't eat yogurt so much at night. It's supposed to be too cooling, right? It can affect your throat or whatever. But and then it seems too meat on one hand, yogurt on the other seems like an imbalance, but as one of my friends says, thank God for emptiness. Nothing is rigid and fixed, and things depend on other factors. So we can't make hard and fast rules all the time. We like to, I think, but anyway, now I'm rambling. Okay. Seems very hard to protect our senses from being overwhelmed in current times. Our whole economy and society seems to be about capturing our attention and senses. Absolutely right, Kunalji, absolutely. That's why I stopped having a television downstairs, although I'm soon to have a family member come with a television, but I will try not to be watching it. Yeah, all these things. There's so many distractions now. So sometimes, yeah, we should just go into a dark chamber and stay there for a long time. Sensory deprivation chamber. Yeah. Free the humans. The t-shirt here, free the human. What's that about? Is that a organization or?
Basically on automation. Automation.
IBM automation. Wow.
It's like when you automate things, when you clean the units from one darkness.
Oh. Wow. Aha. We'll all be free soon then. Okay. Well, look, I'm going to stop now because, yeah, it's time to stop. And I'm very grateful to all of you online, and very grateful to the 8 or 9 people here at Tushita. Didn't look like at the beginning of the session that there would be many people either online or here, but some karmic wind blew all of us together. So let's dedicate. And I have to remember the name of somebody who we're dedicating for, who passed away just a few days ago. Chandar Malhotra passed away after a long sickness in ICU. So please pray for his human rebirth and to meet with the Dharma, the teachings. Yeah. Then there was Ricky Sharma, who died in a tragic car crash last couple of months ago now, who was engaged in wonderful work for young people. Please dedicate for all the teachers to have long and healthy lives, all the authentic spiritual masters, long and healthy lives, all their Dharma wishes to be fulfilled, all our Dharma wishes to be fulfilled. May we take to heart and be inspired by Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise, and as much as we can, at least try to remember it occasionally, and sometimes put it into practice, so that we can create causes for lasting happiness. May we never be separated from authentic teachings and teachers and lineages. May the Sangha always be in harmony. May the centers flourish, especially Tushita Delhi, and may the Maitreya project in Kushinagar also have all the circumstances arising for it to be most beneficial for sentient beings, just as Lama Zopa Rinpoche wished. May all the various schools in the organization find the right teachers, principals, to engage, to carry on their activity in exactly the way Lama Zopa Rinpoche wanted, which is also to have more Buddhist input and even Buddhist schools. So all these things, we dedicate that these kind of things may happen so that we can be more beneficial for others in these challenging times. May Sujitji's brother in Kolkata find the right resources for the operation that may be necessary soon, and may it be most successful. May Nandita recover from her sickness. She is in Dehradun, I believe. And may all of us be well and healthy and happy, and make the most of our circumstances, even difficult circumstances. May they arise as opportunities for benefit to happen. May we never be disheartened, but always remember the examples of the great masters of the traditions, how they overcame hardship and carried on with the practice. Those of us who are suitable, may we find time to practice in mountainous places, in wonderful solitary places, and develop quickly the stages of the path. May people think of benefiting one another. May war and all other horrible things in this world cease. And may sentient beings, through developing more wisdom and compassion, create more and more causes for lasting happiness. Okay, thank you everybody very much for your patience, and hope to see some of you on Thursday, where we will, I'm almost can 100% say we will get on to precious human life. Yeah.